comes on, it's on.
Oh, I know. YouTube comes on quick. It's
Yeah. Well, no, I'm talking about the whole thing. Yeah, I stream to X, Twitter, and I mean I know you do too, but X, Twitter, Facebook, all of it. It just
yeah. All right, that's up.
takes like maybe 10 seconds to connect everything.
Yeah, it's Facebook that's the one that's a little slow. Okay, there I go. I'm good there. Let me hit this. Here we go.
Todd and Rob in the afternoon.
Hey, afternoon delight.
With Todd and Rob. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, here we are. We're back in the studio, back from you being stuck in Florida.
I know I got teased because it's like getting stuck in Florida, and I'm talking to people up in the Northeast, and I'm like going, it's hard to feel too sorry for me.
Yeah, because it actually warmed up, right, where you were at?
Well, no, it actually stayed pretty cold. Actually, it was in the 40s down there, and at night it was getting down into the 30s. So I felt like I was back at home.
I packed when I went to Podfest. I put in 2 long sleeve shirts and all my summer wear. I put three pairs of shorts, some pants, and I didn't even look at the weather report. I got down there and I was like, "What the?" I froze.
Yeah, and if you don't know what we're talking about Podfest. Both of us were down in Orlando at the Podfest Expo about a week ago.
And we froze.
Right.
Oh my God, it was crazy. But anyway, you made it back home after winter again.
Yeah. Well, hopefully spring is right around the corner here, and we start thinking more about the new year, and also what's in store for the next I guess 11 months. I suppose we're almost through the first month already.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I've been I guess for a better word, what's the better word? Slammed. And we're doing a new video series, and I've done 4 interviews so far this week. I've got 4 next week. So I'm front loading a whole bunch of interviews. I've had a number of folks on, and it's fun to talk to people that have a clue.
Yeah, it is. Well,
And-
you probably saw that we're going to have the fellow that's in charge of Adobe podcasts on the show here either next week or the week after. So that's coming up. So it'll be interesting to talk to him.
Yeah,
So,
I'm looking forward to that because I know what they have. I'd like to know what's coming.
right, of course.
If they're willing to talk about this. Sadly, I'm sitting on something I can't talk about that's coming tomorrow tomorrow or Friday.
From them or from
Apple,
your platform?
from Apple.
Or both? Oh, from Apple.
Yeah, Apple's got something big they're about to announce, but I'm under NDA.
Well, to not ask any details.
I
put you
don't even
on
ask.
the spot.
Don't even ask,
I mean, is
Rob.
it a good thing?
Yeah, it's a
Do you
good
think
thing. It's a good
Is
thing.
it a good thing?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a good thing.
Something that's sorely needed?
It's a good thing. I'm just leaving it at that.
Okay, so how will we find out about this?
Apple will announce it. Everyone will get their probably an email. I guess however they do
Odd
it.
News or something like that.
Yeah,
We'll hear about it, you think?
I don't know.
You don't know.
Apple does not share their PR strategy with me.
Yeah, that's true.
All I'm known is I know when I can talk about what's coming.
Well, and I want to talk about that a little bit in relation to one specific platform. So definitely stick around for that. So it's an interesting conversation.
Oh, that's. Oh, I bet you I know which platform we're talking about.
Well, I created an outline, so it's in there.
You
So
didn't
if you
email me the outline. I didn't see
Yeah,
it.
I did.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I sent it to
when did you
your,
send it? 3 minutes before we started, or
No. I sent it probably a couple of hours ago.
Oh,
Yeah, I think I went to your Blueberry account.
Oh, okay. So let me go over to that account. I'm sitting in another.
I know you probably have. I mean, I've got like 3 email addresses for you, maybe 4.
Yeah. So I have it open now, but I guess we can start off with Podcast Hall of Fame. How'd it go?
I thought it went. I thought it went well. I thought it went a lot smoother and was a better production, and just the whole thing just went off smoother this year than last year. I mean, it's not without still some rough edges that need to be filed down a little bit. But each year we appear to be making progress on this, and it keeps getting better. And so
I felt bad for Gordon. He got off. I think he got off his script a little bit one time. I just kind of giggled.
You did, yeah.
But overall,
yeah, I was like, "Do I go on stage or not?" And we had to back off, and that all got fixed in post production. So whatever you saw on the public video,
it went great at the event.
It went perfect.
It went perfect. It did, and the stories were good from the inductees, and there was a number of folks that participated. Not that many video acceptances. There was a few, some because they had, they basically their whole life burned down, literally.
Yeah, Lance Anderson down in L.A. lost his studio.
Yeah,
right.
So
yeah, that's tough stuff.
Yeah, it is. But so what is the future of the Podcast Hall of Fame, Rob?
Well, I would like to, really focus on building a larger kind of organization around it from the standpoint of getting more people involved in it and getting more people providing input on it, like nominees, and also more people that can vote. Because one of the challenges of this is that if I'm going to expand it internationally, which I would like to do, I think it's still maybe a little early to think that that's something that will have a big impact on even next year's event. But I think that's the direction that things are going to move towards. And to be able to do that, I'm going to need a much bigger base of people to participate at various levels around the world too. And to have people from all sorts of different countries involved on, like, maybe the board or at some level of a committee that can kind of give me and give the whole organization feedback on, who should we be nominating from all over the world? Because I certainly don't have deep knowledge on the history of podcasting in Thailand or in any other country around the world, actually. So that's a big challenge. But from an organizational, just operational side of it, I think just getting more content built around the Hall of Fame on an annual basis, kind of ongoing kind of function of the platform, and really to support kind of, I think the bigger mission of the Hall of Fame is to honor and showcase folks that show real leadership in the podcasting space and want to further its goals and really have an inspirational kind of opportunity for others to learn from.
This probably wouldn't work with the current alignment with Podfest, but it'd be interesting to see if you could do it international at the podcast show in London. If you could do,
that's an interesting idea.
Do 10 in America, do 10 international, because there's surely, again, I don't know the international base. In UK, there's surely 10, but
I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, definitely in Europe, there's definitely
So
that.
If someone's listening, and you are outside the United States, and you've been aggravated. Where's my button here?
Don't eat me, James Cridland.
If you are outside of the United States, why don't you help us with that list of those international podcasters or groups? Or again, it's 2 segments. It's podcasters and those that have supported podcasting.
But that doesn't exclude a podcaster. So if a
Right,
podcaster
right, right.
has done organizational things and
Yeah.
been a facilitator in the industry, that's kind of a separate category from being just a straight up podcaster.
And if
right?
the first piece is starting to accumulate the worthy names and building a list, that's nothing can happen international until we have a list.
Right.
And
you also have people from all those countries voting.
and there could be a hybrid model the first year. There could be,
Yeah.
I don't want to say this in this way, but there could be, let's pick them, pick the first 10, that are most deserving. There might even not even need to be a vote the first year. But again, I don't want to make kingmakers here, but something has to kick the can down the road. And then talk about a partner to be able to do a show outside the United States.
Yeah, it's like one of the challenges. It's like any other election, right?
Yeah.
You have to have a large enough pool of people that can have knowledge of the candidates for them to be able to have an influence on the vote. Because I did have some international nominees in the list of possible candidates to be induction.
Yeah.
The problem is very few of them got any votes. So
because nobody knew who they were.
Right. Because the knowledge about them just wasn't there. And I don't really know 100% that's the reason, or if it was more that there were just other people on the list that were definitely stood out, right, as people that really needed to be inducted. And that's part of the struggle of this transition is just going to be, and it even be maybe next year that it does still lean a little bit heavy towards the North America market. Again, it's not going to all of a sudden, be 11 or 10 or 12 inductees that are from outside of the U.S.
Yeah.
I think it's still maybe a little premature for that expectation.
Well, I think it's been what I will say in my regard as far as, and this is outside of the podcast awards, but my phone's ringing again. And in regards to businesses, we've had more calls in January than we had in August, September, October, November, and December.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So
what's the context of the calls on average?
Businesses and different podcasting services. Big
Wanting
businesses
to
get started.
Work with Blueberry?
Yeah. Well, they're shopping. They're talking to 1, 2, 3, 4 players, getting bids. Anything from probably minimum 5 shows to like 20. So, it's like, instead of starting with 1 in baby steps, and we're going to do 5, or we're launching 20. So, it tells me that there is some money coming back on the business side. Same thing internationally. I've had some international calls too. It probably goes into the topic of things going global.
Yeah,
it's definitely, this to me is refreshing, because come about August of this year, I was like, what is going on? And so these are organizations that are not monetarily focused from a monetization standpoint. They're information focused. And here's the real kicker. They want nothing to do with video. They want audio podcast. Like, I keep asking, is video part of your, and they say, not now. It's too much of an undertaking. So from my perspective, for my business, it's very, very simple. When there's not this additional video component, though we support it, then you have to have the talk.
Or why would they be talking to you about a video conversation?
Well, I just
anyways?
ask. I ask if they
Just curious.
Yeah, well, they, everyone now that has a podcast is immediately, you support video podcasting, right? I'm like, yes, of course. So, that's just part of the discussion. But I said, are you going to do video? And I said, no, not in the beginning.
I do do think that there's a lot of differing views on video right now going on in the medium, and there's and it's it's always been part of podcasting,
Yeah.
but it's just what I mean, at what level and who needs to do it, and all those conversations are increasingly what's coming up. And though I do think this global kind of focus that we're coming into is very, very interesting, and I think it's important. I think for the health of the podcasting space, and I think in the show today, you're gonna, there's going to be some common themes, right, that keep coming up over and over ago, at least on this show, about what's going on in the market, and it can be a little confusing, Todd. I mean, it's like one side of the industry saying this, the other side of the industry saying something else, and we're getting anecdotal evidence from this big player and that big player that is, I guess podcasting has always been like trying to corral stray cats. You just can't really get your arms around the whole industry to really understand what's going on.
Well,
because everything is going on.
well, I'll say this. One thing to say about Google, they weren't nothing but cunning. They were more brutal than Spotify was. If you look at what they accomplished by killing,
they can continually
they killed Google Podcast purposely to move the conversation to YouTube. So it's a brilliant PR move that has paid off. And but I think there's I'm seeing a little pullback. I'm not discounting the importance, but I'm seeing in conversations I'm having a little
pullback from the video conversation.
Yeah, a little pullback. And to be honest with you, especially from those, there's two conversations. If monetization is a focus, video's on the table. If monetization's not on the table, then it's not a discussion. So it's kind of funny. I'm like, okay, good luck getting qualified over there to earn money and collect your 50 cents. But I understand the strategy. I'm not gonna, we don't need to hash it out no more. Although we have gotten some feedback from the audience saying, quit talking about video on the show. So I think we have to take it as it comes from that standpoint. But it's there was something that was in Pod News today about commutes, and maybe commutes are back up a little bit, and how people are listening in their car again more.
Going back to the office.
Yeah, going back to the office. Federal workers, good luck with that.
Yeah.
But please listen in. You get your podcast updated. But here's the conversation that you'll find very interesting. I was at an event, and a lady asked me, "What do you do?" And I said, I work in the podcasting space. I run a podcast hosting company, a full service podcasting business. Oh, great. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I'm like, so she says, I love a lot of podcasts. Didn't say listen. I love a lot of podcasts. She said, it's on YouTube, right? I said, no. I have a traditional audio podcast that's on all podcast apps, and I didn't know what kind of a phone she was holding. And I said, if you have an iPhone, I said, it's just right on the phone. You can just click on the podcast app, and you can find my show. She goes, I have an Android. And I'm like, fuck. Because I would have originally said, well, Google Podcasts is there for you. So instead, we had to go back to the old conversation of, well, you should grab a podcast app, and I've got a few you recommend. And she goes, she says, you're not on YouTube? I'll just catch you on YouTube. So there is where Google has won the argument and is driving the conversation. So all Android users and all Android app makers need to understand what they're up against here. And I just thought it was an interesting antidote of then I asked her, I said, so do you watch podcasts or do you listen to podcasts? And she goes, only watch. I said, you don't listen to them while you're doing dishes? Oh, no, I watch. And I said, do you watch any podcasts that have a static screen? She goes, that's not a podcast. That's just audio. I thought, So the argument,
flipperoo, Todd.
the argument, so it kind of proved my point to it. And it just made me kind of realize that because Google controls the phone. So those of you that are Android, you guys need to double down on your promotion of your apps to Android devices. That's why we've now that's last year when Google Podcasts went away. That's why we re-upped the ante into subscribe on Android.com. We made sure all our apps were up to date and everything was working, because now we're watching click-throughs again, and that traffic has it went like this, Rob. For those of you listening, it went straight up. The traffic to that website peaked out again because Android users were looking for an app, a podcast app, because their app went away. So brilliant marketing on Google's standpoint, on what they've done and set us back.
Yeah, I would agree, Todd. They've been successful over the last year to kind of shift the conversation as, YouTube is the number one place to find new podcasts, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've been able to successfully shift that conversation.
But at least in one listener interaction, they're not watching your static album art. Okay, so
right.
So
right. That's true.
You've got a note here. Samsung podcast platform shutdown. That happened a little while ago.
It did, but it's more of a kind of like a theme to some degree that I spotted. I know Spreaker has done the same thing. It hasn't been talked about, but they really pulled back from their listening platform side too.
Do they have video?
No.
Oh.
But think about that from the standpoint of they were acquired by, iHeart Media. So iHeart Media is a consumption platform.
Right. So they don't want you listening on Spreaker. They want you on iHeart.
I don't think that they wanted to emphasize the listening app side of Spreaker as a competitor to iHeart.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's oftentimes reasons for all these things that happen, but I think that the Samsung one is
money.
Well, and I think, Todd, you probably agree with me. The approach that Samsung took
it was horrible.
Was horrible.
They had 0.00001 market penetration, so loss on anybody's part.
Right.
It was horrible.
And then the other one I want to talk about, and I know James Cridland has talked about this one repeatedly over the last couple of months, is TuneIn.
Yeah.
And I've got a fair amount of history with TuneIn too, as far as knowing and trying to get them embracing podcasting for many years now. But they basically have let go of all their podcast dedicated staff, and they basically haven't accepted any new RSS feeds into their platform for over a year now.
We're removing them from our distribution. Actually, we're leaving it up with a note that they're not taking any more submissions, and we're leaving it in there for those folks that have current listings still on TuneIn.
But the CEO has stated, this is Richard Stern, who's never really been an advocate for podcasts. He's always kind of taken a negative tone around podcasts for many years now, but he stated that updating podcasts in TuneIn is mostly only going to be done through their partner creator partnerships.
Where it feeds money.
Well, yeah. I mean, they have a team that goes out and signs deals, right?
Yeah.
And in this case, one of their key providers is iHeart.
Oh.
So we may see, any new podcasts come in through the iHeart platform. So when you submit to iHeart, that may help you get into to TuneIn.
But
at
iHeart
some
has
point.
been notoriously horribly slow
I know.
in taking shows. We see 2 months for shows to get approved on iHeart. It's
Yeah,
horrible.
so that whole ecosystem is kind of broken, and they're basically, the CEO was quoted in saying he complained, saying that there's no revenue to them for adding podcasts and TuneIn, and that they get no or very little listening to podcasts on their platform. Well, I think there's maybe some good reason for that.
Yeah, I think so too.
Right.
Second-class
And-
citizen.
Well, it is. It's a de-emphasized media area on the platform.
Yeah.
Plus, the platform is really, live streaming. Really,
Yeah.
96% of the listening is live audio on the platform.
Which they can make money on.
Right.
They can
just
they run advertising.
ads. Right.
Yeah.
And this on-demand thing that the cool kids and the younger kids want to do is not as favorable to their expectation of their user base. So, but their app is in cars and stuff like that. So, I don't tend, when I use the TuneIn app, even in my own vehicle, I tend to listen to streaming music stations, not go find a podcast. If I'm going to go listen to a podcast in my car, it's going to be an Apple podcast.
Yeah.
So there's probably good reason for this.
So
stuff, but-
pull back on distribution points.
yeah,
But
that's,
in reality,
it's more settling out of the dust, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I
yeah.
think all these folks that saw this shiny light of an opportunity like Samsung to get into
Yep.
podcasting it's just all kind of settling out as people look at their budgets and they look at their staffing and see what's bringing results, and I think that's the era that we're in right now is hard work, merit, and results. It's what everybody wants now. And oftentimes now it's all about,
it's
everybody on the team is all about bringing in revenue.
it's revenue, baby. If you're a company owner, even my company, are we doing this? Does this lead to revenue? Does this help us grow?
Right.
I have to ask those questions. In this economic period,
Environment, right.
you have to be, where are the dollars coming from? And then how can I make it better so that we keep the current customers and we attract new ones?
And that was the conversation that I had with Microsoft when I was working there too. Back when I was the podcast business manager for Xbox back in those days, was if we're going to invest a bunch of developer resources into this and staff and stuff, there has to be some sort of revenue model that's coming in. So I proposed a bunch of options on that, but at the end of the day, I think they just assessed that it wasn't enough to justify.
I'm going to lose my train of thought here when it comes to money. I know what it was. Meanwhile, Spotify just signed a new deal with a music group that is going to cause Spotify's subscription costs to go up. So they made a deal with them because, hey, give us some sugar for playing this so that we can still allow the artist to starve, but pay us, and yet podcasters get nothing. So, when is there going to be a reversal? When are podcasters going to start waking up and saying, hey, you're not taking care of me, I'm not going to take care of you? Will that happen? I doubt it.
Well, Todd, another big Uber kind of large trend that I'm seeing in the industry too is that this relatively small group of really big shows is really having a big impact, right?
Yeah.
And they're bringing in a lot of revenue, and it's like maybe the top 200 or 300 shows out there
Yeah, bringing in massive money.
are garnering, half of the overall listening audience.
Well, that's the way it's I don't think they're garnering half of the listening audience. They're garnering half of the revenue, or 3/4.
Well, I think Tom Webster's actually posted about this like last year, saying that top 50 podcasts are taking the majority of the audience. And so it does make me wonder as we look at this transition from legacy media over to the internet creators being the mainstream media now, which I think we can clearly say that the audiences have made their choice. And it's not necessarily to spend a lot of their time on cable television, right?
Yeah.
So we're seeing this massive shift. And what was going on in that time frame was more exclusivity, right? Was always the business model of the media companies. And that's an interesting kind of paradigm to maybe what be somewhat is going on here, is that we're seeing a new type of mainstream media start to form, and it's forming around companies that started originally as podcasts, but are also branching out into video too, right? So are we shifting towards huge audiences going towards this online distribution strategy versus being on cable television as the future? And it raises the question is, well, what's the opportunity for those that are not considered to be in the top 500, right, shows? What is the opportunity that's left behind, and how do we make that pool of impact and audience bigger than just the top 200 or 300 shows, right?
Right.
How do we keep growing new creators into this medium? Because I would hate for us to fall back into this paradigm of being just like mainstream media again. With the heavy ad loads, those kind of things, those trend lines are also happening too, which comes out of legacy media. So I just worry, Todd, what's your thought on that? Do you feel that happening somewhat too?
Well, I was trying to bring it up, but X is having a fit with my browser right now. I wanted to show you something I captured yesterday. Let's see if I can get it to. This is bizarre. I've never seen this do this on X before. Look what's happening with my screen. Reload.
Wow, that's weird.
Yeah, so who knows? I got something going on with the browser here. Let me shut the browser down and come back to it. What I think. So yesterday, the new administration's press secretary, I don't know if you heard this or not, she basically announced we now have a seat at the table in the press room for she called it new media.
Well, the first one that she listed when she mentioned that was podcasts.
That's right. And
then blogs, which I was surprised she said that.
Our web traffic yesterday spiked, Rob. We had about 300,000 hits on the New Media Show website yesterday because people were Googling new media.
Oh.
And they found our site. And so we had this hammered. We got hammered for about 2 hours yesterday. So, so if you're a new subscriber because of the press secretary, welcome.
Right.
So yeah, she specifically said podcast, but in their mind, podcasts are these YouTubers, they're not about the audio podcasters. So I'm hoping that some industrious audio only podcasters apply. It's going to end up being a Bongino or one of those folks that's going to get approved to get a seat at their, at the press secretary table. Now, of course, they did preface that with you have to pay your own way. So it's got to be someone that is either in DC or has a budget,
or has a team member in the area,
but they only gave him one seat. All the other press has got like 30 or something.
It's a pretty small room from what I gather.
I know, but they have like this pool, of people that are permanently seats, and then they have a pool of people that can come in on a periodic basis.
Yeah, and stand around the perimeter.
Yeah, or be in the back row, whatever it may be. But to me, there we go. It's working now. Okay, let me log in here. it's probably going to ask me to authenticate, and I don't have my phone on me. Yes, of course, my phone is on the other side of the room, so I can't log into X without getting off the mic here. So there, I guess going back to your thing here, there is and has been a major opportunity for anyone creating original content. YouTubers, podcasters, TikTok, well, we'll see if it survives. There is a huge opportunity because, and especially considering the 400 or some thousand active shows or whatever the number is today on Podcast Index, and I haven't looked. That's a relatively small number as compared to the 35 or 80 or 100 million or whatever his channels on YouTube, but only 25 get promoted, or 1,000 get promoted. There's huge opportunity here now, and in my opinion, this is the time to double down on audio. Not just because I'm pro audio, but it's time to double down. I think there's just huge opportunity here as people shift. I think there's a mindset change that's happening as well. There's been a walk away of some content online. There's definitely been a walk away from mainstream media. There's been a walk away from news content on YouTube that got decimated after the election. I think there's a huge opportunity. At the same time, I think YouTube will be spending big money. I don't know if I said this on the last show or not, but I think YouTube is going to dump a pile of cash and try to make some kingmakers. They're going to try to be a kingmaker. I don't know if that answers your question, Rob, but I still think there is a...
Well, I just think that there's two ends of the spectrum now. And one is these really big creators, right? That have shifted from network television over to online, and a lot of them took their audiences with them to the online realm.
And now I'm having to downvote stuff because now the Alago is feeding me a whole bunch of stuff that I've run away from. It's feeding me mainstream media clips.
On what platform?
On YouTube.
On YouTube.
It's shoving the shit that I was watching before that I was paying for. It's now shoving that stuff into my Alago feed because I listen to a podcast or I listen to a YouTube channel with this associated type of content that I wanted to hear from a human being and not a talking head. And it said, because you're listening to Talking Head, and you must want to listen to this 3-digit or 4-digit or whatever the letter channel numbers are now for ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox News, and all. So it was shoving
about the cable channel.
Yeah, it was shoving that stuff, mainstream media, shoving that stuff into my YouTube feed, and I'm like, no, I don't want it. Get it out of my feed. I run away from this. Don't force it on me. And so for me, I actually, the other night, it got so bad, I was just like, do I have to reset my account? Can't get away from it. It was shoving this type of, because my subscriptions were caught up, and my homepage was just one thing after the Fox, NBC, ABC, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, kill me. I don't want to watch these people.
Though I think that this shift away from cable networks, cable television, is just going to drive these bigger media companies to put a lot more energy into making and distributing longer form content on the online platforms.
It's already being proved by what they were trying to shovel at me. There was stuff that was 30 minutes long. These weren't shorts. These were
it's content. I think it's still yet to come. But
new content
that was previously done primarily for cable. Cable subscribers, they're going to push over into YouTube. I think that's coming. I'm not sure it's fully...
Where are they going to make their money? You know, they
It's going to
don't.
be ad revenue. It's going to be embedded ads,
It's not going to
just
make,
like everybody else.
but it's not going to make up for the carriage fees.
No,
You
it's
know,
not.
it's not.
That's
They're not going
that's
to get
why
the
they
same money.
that's why they have to trim their staffs. They're going to have to be more like a scrappy online internet
How many did
creator.
CNN fire here recently? They fired a bunch, right? I heard something
Yeah,
about that.
yeah, and some of the anchors are leaving, and so
Well,
you're seeing
some of the
really
anchors were the reason for their rating decline.
right. But these bigger networks do have some advantages making this
Oh
shift,
yeah, of course.
because they've been around a long time.
Well,
They have a lot of brand awareness.
they
So if
still
they
have
take
some budget.
right, so if they take an internet primary
Mm.
strategy, they could probably continue to do well, but they will not continue to do well unless they adopt what the audience is expecting, right?
Truth,
And also
the truth.
the monetization approaches that that the successful folks are
So,
utilizing.
like I said, a great time to have a podcast.
And consequently, their staff levels are going to have to be dramatically reduced. They're going to have to be more flexible in how they produce their shows to keep the cost down.
So, Rob, you might have a job as a grip at one of these companies that's downsizing.
Oh yeah, I want to be a grip.
You
I'm gonna hold
you
on to
move
that
from
camera.
podcast, go into mainstream media, and teach them the new media way.
Right, right.
You can be an associate producer. Woo!
Though I don't know that it's going to be a big shift for them. I think they get it.
Yeah, I
but
think
I
they get it.
also think that it's going to be there's just going to be a lot smaller.
Here's what's
cable
funny.
networks.
Here's what's funny is the reason that they get it is video to video. Right. They're going video
Content is what they've been doing for a while.
video to video. Put it on YouTube, put it on the airways. It's video is video. Why can't radio figure it out that audio is audio?
Because, well, yeah.
How come they haven't figured it out? How come the mainstream media has figured out, oh, we need to be over here on this platform? How come radio?
It's an interesting question, Todd. I think it is around format. And to some degree, I think the video folks have the same challenge, right? They have more frequent ad breaks and things like that. But I'm not sure, given what's going on with the monetization stuff, and I want to talk about something else that come up here that's going to confirm what we've been talking about for a couple of years now. But is this monetization approach is a big flex point too. I mean, the revenue that these companies are going to generate is going to be dramatically less than what they're used to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And there's a couple things here. I should probably
They're
jump
not going to
ahead
be able to roll a truck
right.
because
This next
go ahead and throw it in there because this is where where the money really hits the road.
Well, yeah, there's a research, I guess, intelligence report that came out from S&P Global Market Intelligence suggests that the U.S. podcast industry won't top $2 billion in revenue until 2032.
Here's what I know why. I'll tell you why.
Well, if you keep running ads in smaller numbers of shows, that
Yeah.
are bigger shows, you're not going to grow.
If you don't look down, you don't look down to the
Right.
100,000 other shows that are available.
Plus, this content moderation, brand suitability stuff has limited the acceptability of other shows too. It's been a block.
Here's what I was told. I was talking with someone that is very much, I mean, they're I'll say top 3 in someone in a company that's in the top 3 of advertising and podcast. And it wasn't Libsyn. Okay. We just leave them out. It wasn't them. It was someone that was not exhibiting at Podfest. I'll just leave it that way. And we got into this conversation about exactly what you're talking about. And you know what they said? It's a ruse. No one cares about brand suitability. They just have to say it.
Yeah.
They don't care They want in these shows, no matter what. They don't care if the person is talking about the daily download while he's creating a podcast on the toilet. All they really care about is being in these shows.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of the brands have been in these shows for a very long time before that whole thing came up.
But
right?
this whole brand safety thing is a ruse.
Yeah,
It's a ruse.
Yeah, I think it's falling
I think I've
apart.
used that word 2 or 3 times tonight.
Yeah, I think it's the whole concept of it is kind of dismantling.
But media buyers are lazy, and they're going to buy what's easy, and they only have to do a few percentage points better than their predecessor did to get promoted. So you and I have talked about this forever.
And ad loads has a factor in this too.
How does
if you have a small number of shows that you're stuffing all this advertising into, it's going to create an atmosphere where the brands are going to say, well, I'm not getting the ROI that I want off of this stuff. Why is that? I'm going to pull it out and put it somewhere else.
I had a radio person said, we're going to run 12, 13, 14 spots an hour, 15 spots an hour in our content. And it was
all
like,
it's doing is killing.
and I'm just like, okay, good luck with that.
Yeah, and this is the result. Is a peaking of the podcast advertising
In a race to the bottom. A race to the bottom.
As CPMs fall too, because of all of these headwinds.
Mm-hmm.
And as the buyers are looking at this going, well, it's also a metrics issue too. As you as a big podcaster run a lot of ads, then the brands are starting to realize that, if I'm in a sequence, I'm in the 6th ad in this show, right? That may be too much ad load before, and my message is going to get lost. And so I'm going to pull back on that.
I'll reveal a secret here. And I got turned on to this by, I don't know if I should say who it is. I'll say who it is. Rocky and I were having a conversation in the hallway at Podfest.
I haven't talked about Podfest that much yet.
And we're talking about, okay, James and everyone else, listen up. If you listen to Podcasting 2.0, you know what I'm already going to say. So Rocky and I are having a conversation in the hallway, and we're talking about, she's showing me her phone. And she's using a modern podcast app that is playing chapters, showing chapter images. She said, have you ever seen this?
Oh, yeah. We've seen that so many times over the years.
And, she's looking at this, and I'm like, oh, that's a chapter file. And every time it gets to a new mark, a new image comes up. Wow. She said, we could get attribution for advertising with this.
Well, that's true.
And I was like, So Todd comes home and I do a couple experiments. Now people are going to fucking hate me here. So Todd just did an experiment. He put a chapter file at the beginning of his GoDaddy ad, a chapter file at the middle of his GoDaddy ad, and a chapter file at the end of his GoDaddy ad. And he put a unique image that just basically showed up for a second, because I followed with another chapter file. And then I went into my log files and I looked for that image to have been loaded.
So you didn't actually display it, so anybody
it displayed.
Could really see
it blinked, or however long it took to switch.
Right.
And it probably was up there for 5 seconds or whatever. Clink, clink, clink. So guess people's heads are swimming right now. I guarantee you, if they're listening. And I went to my log files on Geek News Central. I went to my raw log files because the image was on my website. And I looked at the stats, and just the regular web stats, nothing fancy. How many times did that image loaded? And it showed me a number.
Mhm.
And I looked at the beginning number, the middle number, and the end number. And I'm like, oh, I know this many people listen to my ad. Now, here's the problem. I had the IP data because it came into my show, so I could back that out. So there are concerns here, but there's nothing to stop a podcaster today, any podcaster that's running advertising, for them to put their own markers in and be able to get a rough measurement of how many people listen to their ad in a Podcasting 2.0 app that supports chapter files. I got my attribution without any help from anybody else. I didn't need Blueberry to do it. Todd did it on his show. So the privacy folks right now are going, oh my God. Oh, they're freaking. I guarantee you some people are going, some people are saying, some people are right now picking up their phone.
Yeah.
But it's not supported by very many apps. Pocket Cast, and a lot of the Podcasting 2.0. It's not supported by Apple. It's not supported by Spotify. So the data that we'll be able to get if someone chooses is
pretty incomplete.
Pretty incomplete. But it gives an indication. So if I know, as an
it's
example,
like a sample.
it's a sample. If I know that Pocket Cast on my podcast has a 5% listener audience, and for that episode, Pocket Cast was 100 listens, and I got 50 fires from Pocket Cast, I know that 50% of the people that listen to my show on Pocket Cast through my just basic podcast analytics listen to my ad.
So on the image that you fired, did you just fire a 1 pixel image?
Nope.
Or did
I
you
just
fire
I fired an image.
Graphic.
A graphic. Just a graphic. I just did a regular graphic, little square graphic.
But you don't have to.
No.
I mean, you could throw up just a transparent pixel if you want.
Could have been. Yeah. Could have been. So we have, oh man, people are hating me right now. I guarantee it. We have client side data, and you don't need your podcast host at all to give you this information. If you run your own website and you have your own .com and you have your own log files. And if you name that file so unique that there's nowhere else it can be loaded.
Right. It's only pointing to a source on your own personal brand website.
That's right. Yep. So it was me that they were talking about on Podcasting 2.0. I did it from my show. Where Blueberry is not doing any of this yet.
So how did you actually get that count? Was it through like a Google Analytics?
I just went to Google Analytics.
Okay.
Yeah, and I looked for that image load specifically. It is in the log files too, so I kind of did a cross reference in the log files.
Mm-hmm.
But because Google Analytics, you got to really kind of dig and know where to go look for that. So, but I just looked in my log files. That's right, I pull it out because it really isn't a. Pulled it from the log files where I did the primary count. I just did a search.
It's just an image.
Image
ping
load
is what.
Yeah,
is really
that's
all it is.
So, and invariably, now if we want to implement this as a standard, then we got to put the privacy piece in. If a host is going to do this, they're going to need to, and we're already GDPR ready, so I would be able to count those impressions and then anonymize the data, and we can keep it private.
Right.
But
because that could be associated with an IP address.
Absolutely. Well, it is. You can see the IP plain as day for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if a host is going to do this, they're going to have to reassure privacy stuff and all that. But then it may stifle adoption of chapter files because people will say, well, now you've got a way to find information out about this audience that's
and they'll
listening.
block it.
Or they won't allow that data to come back through. So maybe I've opened Achilles' heel here, but it's so simple. I mean, I just kind of had this moment like, yeah, this will work. Now, there is some additional testing I have to do. Are the apps loading the image when the app is not visible?
Mhm.
Are those images still being loaded behind the scene? Are they still firing? Everything I can tell, yes.
Right.
So it was me, but I
All your
wasn't.
fault, Todd.
Well, it was Rocky's fault because Rocky, kind of like,
What?
wow,
I keep doing it the wrong way.
yeah. Rocky was like, wow, we could fire a pixel.
Right.
Yeah, we could. So client-side data is possible in podcasting apps if they implement the chapter files. Be responsible, folks. But
Yeah, 'cause
also,
I do think that there is some data metrics envy between what we're seeing in YouTube and podcasting.
this is an equalizer.
Right.
It is. Is, Rob, this is a solution for all our wants and needs on client-side data. This is today the solution that works right now.
Right. Right.
But you got to have a chapter file. Now, what's going to happen next? Is someone going to say, okay, see, and this is another thing too. It's almost not able to be detected by, if you're careful, let's say you name the chapter file XYZ, in the middle of it XYZB, you use naming, there's no bot that they might be able to learn where to jump, but you could be very stealthy in how you do that placement so that you can load a regular image and it doesn't have to be a pixel, and you can it could look like it was one of the original 30 chapters, because my chapter files have 25, and by the way, I have removed it. It's off my chapter files right now because I wasn't going to announce it, but I thought I might as well, because we're talking about this enviable data that people want.
Either way, I would keep whatever you link to in there, or whatever image that you link to fire this off to get it counted. Probably needs to be pretty lightweight on the data load. Right.
But the apps are loading images that are big.
Are they?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
is there a limit to that for kind of efficiency, or?
No, I've got 30 chapters in my show on a regular basis. Be honest with you, I don't usually have time to go through my entire chapter file and populate it with images.
It's a pretty labor
intensive. The chapter files are created with titles and time hacks, but you have to go in, but that's another thing too. You could just load the chapter files at the locations that you want. Now, this gets totally screwed up if you run programmatic. If you're running programmatic, it's a fixed ad in the content. You run programmatic, then the chapter file will be offset. It won't work. So if this is being dynamically built, the chapter file is set to a fixed timeline and there's no offsets currently being added to chapter files to account for programmatic advertising. Unless you know that the first minute is going to be ads.
Right, and then it can just adjust everything.
You could trick it.
Yeah.
But again, this is an interesting, and I think there was quite a bit of consultation when Dave and Adam were talking about it on the show last week. So
yeah, interesting.
But there was a conversation with Brian Barletta at Podfest 2. I had a conversation with him. I don't think Brian fully understands Podcasting 2.0. None of the stuff in Podcasting 2.0 requires an API. The majority of everything's in the feed. It just
Yeah.
requires adoption. It doesn't require any fancy back-end interface. It doesn't require some central authority to fire some. The only thing that Podcasting 2.0 needs on the hosting side is for us to be able to send a ping that says, it's called pod ping. We say that there's a new episode available in this show and it updates the index. And that's on the
Right.
hosting side. That's not that. Now the apps can watch for the pod ping if they want to be able to update. But everything else is, at least I'm thinking, is static. Everything is static in the feed. So
Well,
we don't.
there is an update to the publishing interface that needs to happen with the hosts for some of the
Oh yeah.
podcasting
Oh yeah.
2.0 features.
Oh yeah, we had to add all the features, and the same thing with the app developers. The app developers have to decide which features they're going to add. Now, probably I just caused Marco over at Overcast to never allow chapter files.
Yeah.
I'm sure that he will never put chapter files in based upon what I just said.
Right.
He's got he has a very exclusive way of making money on that app. So, but this is a way any podcaster that controls their RSS feed and controls their own .com to get attribution data for the ads they're running at a smaller level on a limited number of apps. If you have no one using Pocket Cast or Fountain or any of the other apps that support chapters, you're going to get nothing.
So Todd, I noticed something that's happening over in the UK. It looks like the Ricky Gervais Show, which is a name that hasn't been mentioned in podcasting
Wow.
now for a few years. It is now back high in the UK podcast charts again for some reason.
Is he?
And he's not creating new content either.
Oh, who's pumping his show?
I don't know. I'm not sure why it's all of a sudden becoming popular again.
And he's not doing new episodes?
As far as I know.
I wonder what outfit in Bangladesh someone paid to cause his numbers to go up.
Yeah, I think it's a good question for Ricky to answer. I don't know if he's done something that's got him attention over there and people are like finding it.
One thing that's fun about going to events is we all kind of chit chat with each other.
Yeah.
And the amount of fraud that is being attempted by podcasters is on the rise again.
On the part of the podcaster,
Oh yeah.
primarily?
Yeah, and they're paying people to
Oh, for downloads and
yeah,
stuff?
yeah. In
Those-
part of our IEB recertification, we added a whole bunch of, they call it monitoring. And we added some new tools because we've had fraud prevention tools for a long time, but we added some new things and make it easier for me to see activities. There's a lot. I don't care if you're trying to pump your numbers and you don't have any advertising running, but I'm going to tell you, if your show is running programmatic advertising at Blueberry and you're doing something that comes across my radar, you're gone. You're not getting paid.
So I also heard a comment from Westwood One podcast network of sorts. This statement from some, I guess, a PDF or document that they put out too that makes a statement that ads that have emotion or are otherwise interesting can work better, right? More than 6 times better than boring ads.
Well, boring ads come from advertising folks that made you read strict copy.
Right.
Yes. I'm not
That's the
surprised.
power of the creative host read.
Yeah. Call me surprised.
Yeah, right. There's no surprise.
No surprise.
And Spotify has now launched its own plaque award.
Of course.
If you're familiar with the YouTube platform, they have different levels of like achievements of sorts. It's the gamification of the platform that if you hit 100,000 subscribers, they will send you this silver plaque that says, that all these YouTubers put behind them on their
Wow.
bookshelf. And I did hear that the ones that they gave out like a year ago are like half the size now. So they've downsized, which is very, I guess, consistent with what we've seen with YouTube and Google over the years, is that everything gradually gets smaller from the share of the commission to the size of the awards.
I was looking for my 1 million mile plaque from United.
Yeah.
It's about that big.
Okay.
About the size of a deck of cards.
Well, I mean, if you think about it from an cost efficiency standpoint, Todd, it's probably a little less shipping to ship it to someone.
YouTube requires you to buy your plaque. You don't get it for free.
Oh, I thought they sent it out.
I
to you
don't
for
think
free.
so. I think you have to pay for those. I saw the price on there's a store somewhere that someone can find the link, but you can't. I know what the pricing is. Pretty high.
You could afford to send those out for free, Todd.
I think they pay. I think
people.
people have to pay for them.
It's a profit center for them. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
well, yeah, no.
So Spotify has one now. It's a plaque award, similar to YouTube, but if you look at their numbers, just like their monetization program, right, Todd? It's this astronomical thing that you have to hit in order to qualify for one of these things, right?
Yep.
The gold one for podcasters is those that have had 500 million streams. Doesn't say downloads. It says 500 million streams.
How many people were awarded that?
It's probably like
did they say how many the numbers were?
10 people, I think. Yeah, I didn't see it. I mean, it's like Rogan and
okay. And then what's the next level?
Silver is the next one. 250 million streams. I mind. And then the bronze is 100 million.
So, Rob, I wonder what it would cost. Oh, this is so ripe. And what's a qualification for a stream? How many minutes does it have to play?
Whatever their counting methodology is, which I don't know what that is.
Now, a good experiment. I'm not saying that you should do this at all. And if you're not running any advertising, this is, I'm sure there is a firm in Bangladesh that you could pay to get your 100 million streams on Spotify. They'll probably spread that out across a couple thousand devices. You could probably do it over a 2 or 3 month period to build, you don't want to look like you're getting it all at once. Start it out slow, start building up, and build your traffic and get to that 100 million mark, and don't shut it off right away because your traffic will die if they'll see something going on, and then pay for the traffic to kind of go down. I bet you for 6 to 9 months of work, and probably a couple $1,000s, you can probably get one of those plaques.
Right. Well, what's ironic about it is that they're specifically referring to podcasters.
I know.
And podcasts, most of the big podcasts coming into Spotify are on a download basis, not a stream.
Right. But they don't count downloads, they count streams.
So, but if it's not streamed, then how can they count it as a stream? I'm a little confused on this, but because maybe they're talking about video too. I don't know. I wouldn't imagine that the videos are streamed, technically.
I've got a story to relay, but I'm waiting for Spotify to reply to my email on how was this found out. I have something, a very peculiar situation has happened on some recent takedowns of content.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm on pass. I'll just leave it at that.
And then Sirius XM, I guess, pulled the Alex Cooper show, Call Her Daddy.
Oh.
Pulled the video version from Spotify.
Pulled the video version, not the audio version?
Yes, and Alex, the host of Call Her Daddy, said in an Instagram post that you can watch for free on YouTube.
But you can listen on Spotify?
I guess you can only listen on Spotify now. So here's another big creator that has pulled their video from Spotify, Sirius
I
XM.
wonder if it wasn't performing as well.
Something's going on there.
Huh.
Also, why would they be pointing to consumption on YouTube?
Well, maybe the video, maybe they were. Let's just use a hypothesis here. If you are Sirius XM and you have I'm sure there's a partnership agreement with Call Her Daddy and Spotify, and I'm sure they're part of their revenue stream. And if Call Her Daddy was getting 500,000 views, I'm just using a number, 500,000 views per episode on audio, and getting paid for 500,000 views of audio on a rev share basis, and we put up the video, and the video went to 100,000, and you only get paid for 100,000, I would contend there might be a reason you would remove video from Spotify. I'm guessing.
What I gather, the revenue that comes out of YouTube generally is better than what is coming out of Spotify.
But if you were making XY, let's say on your audio podcast, you were making $10,000 an episode, and you dropped the video in, and your revenue went down to 1,000.
Right. On the audio side too.
Well, because the audio doesn't play because you've overwritten your video. You put the video, and the video's playing, so you're only going to get paid on the video plays no more. Huh?
Yep.
Huh?
I think Spotify has made a little bit of a mess for themselves or there in their platform.
Oh.
So I'm not sure that this is working out the way they had hoped. But
Rob,
yeah.
TikTok, we'll see how long it takes before they have to change.
Are you talking about the TikTok app, Todd? Or
Spotify. I'm talking about Spotify
I remember we talked about TikTok, and I told you that it wasn't going to go away.
Yeah.
And you said it's gone.
Well, for 24 hours it was gone.
Okay, so
it's
we
not
both
a done deal. They're on the clock.
Yeah.
But I just, it's too big to fail at this point. I just don't, they still have, here's the thing, and that I find really fascinating, and most people don't understand. And I was trying
Elon doesn't want it.
Well, I was trying to figure out how, because Trump said, well, if we get 50% of it, the United States wins. And I'm like, how's that work? How does
we want the federal government owning a big platform like that?
Well,
do we?
okay, but if the federal government is the one that controls the on and off switch, let's say OpenAI, not Anthropic, is the one that's actually latest talking about buying TikTok. So if Anthropic buys TikTok and the United States government gets a piece to guarantee this switch doesn't get turned off, is that coercion, or is that just utilization of the law?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, how does this work? Someone's got to explain this to me, how the U.S. is going to get a piece of this. But again, it's true. If the U.S. doesn't approve the deal, it doesn't happen, and it gets turned off. Pretty impressive bargaining chip.
Yeah. So what'd you think of this new China AI platform that came out?
If you're using the app and you're putting anything in there that is of your business, of your life, of anything, you are an idiot. And
I haven't even loaded or even
no way. First, number one, I think they're lying. I think they're lying on how they built their model. I think they're lying. There's already evidence coming out that they ripped off OpenAI data by doing API calls to their bot. There's all kinds of things. China, I don't trust any. Oh my God. Now, if you download the model and put it on a computer,
On your local machine.
on your local machine,
Yeah, right.
then okay, do what you want to do. But if you're using their app to send queries to, not a chance. I already put out company etiquette. I told my company this is banned. This is BANNED, banned from company use. Subject to administrative issues if you're found using this app.
Yeah.
Because it's in their terms of service. We will collect and build our model based upon what you submit to it. And these people are just willy-nilly using it. I'm like, do people not understand? I was talking about this with someone earlier today, and we're both shaking our heads.
Hey, Todd, I was, I didn't tell anybody, but I was down in New Jersey a month or so ago flying my drone around.
Were you? Well, I've always said, okay.
Because supposedly that's what was going on.
Okay,
down
now let's back up. You're a guy, you're talking to a guy that had a security clearance for 30 plus years.
there. Yeah.
There's always a smidgen of the truth.
Oh, yeah. Of
You
course.
never get the whole story.
Right.
There's a very smidgen of a cover story, enough to take the eye off the ball.
Right.
I have no security clearance. I've not been read in. I know nothing. No one has called me. I know nothing. I'm just telling you, you've gotten a smidgen. Notice how everyone's all happy? Oh, it was what the
now I know
FAA
the
approved.
answer.
It was
Right,
great.
everything
No.
was fine.
Uh-huh.
If that was the case, then the government really had no reason to not tell us that. Right?
I have my suspicions, but all I can say is it definitely, first of all, I do believe it was government. I do believe it was our government. But what were they looking for? And what were they testing? They don't say this is FAA has given them permission. Everyone has, by the way, here's the stupid thing. Rob,
this whole thing is PSYOP.
Rob, the FAA has given you permission to fly your drone within allowed flight areas. You can fly up to 400 feet as long as you don't get 5 miles within an airport. And there's rules.
Oh, I know.
You can fly your drone. The FAA has given you, Rob, permission to fly your drone, and me permission. And there's lots of people that violate the 5 miles of airports and all this stuff all the time, and they go into no-fly zones. But the question really is, what did they give permission to?
Right.
No answer on that. No one.
Right.
Why don't report? Well, what agency was given a permission? Was it Department of Energy? Was it the DoD?
FAA.
If I was a betting man, it was DOE. Department of Energy, not Department of Education. Department of Energy. Todd,
I'd put
a $100 bill down on that.
I've also seen here recently just an explosion of new videos on YouTube talking about all these various devices that are free energy generators. Have you?
I've seen
this?
it, but I'm sorry. I have better video optics on. Come on, get a camera with a lens.
No. I'm
I
talking about
I know.
actual inventors that have a machine right there that's
Oh.
generating electricity with no fuel.
Rob, guess what? Please, if someone comes to you to invest,
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, you may not live long is my concern.
well, I who knows? I at this point I can just hit fun watching the conspiracy theories.
right.
you know.
I mean, I can see it right on the screen. It's
Yeah.
like,
Well,
see how it
again,
works.
there's a lot of AI right now, so how do you know what you're watching is not some fake video someone's put together?
actually, one I saw that talked about how AI had designed and helped build a rocket engine a small rocket engine. Actually did all the designing, and they utilized a 3D printer to actually print the engine out.
I heard from a
And it fired up the first time.
I'm hurt. If you have the budget, Rob, and I'll let you. You're the guy with all the money.
What?
That $200 level of Chat GPT. I'm almost actually.
Well, they're losing money on that, I heard.
Well, I heard the $200 level. There's been some stuff I've seen on Twitter where people have demoed that version because it's giving you access to stuff that no one else has access to right now. It's pretty wow. Pretty wow. And, it's not like I got $200 laying around, but it's almost tempting to do the upgrade to try it.
Yeah.
Anybody wants to donate to the show? If you want to make a donation to the New Media Show, the PayPal link's right on the website, newmediashow.com. You want to grant us some extra cash to play around with. I'd use my portion to test that $200 version of ChatGPT.
That'd be awesome. Well, Todd, here in the last couple minutes, let's do a recap on Podfest a little bit.
Yeah, great.
Talk about that and what you saw there, and
I think they have such a huge opportunity to really grow that show. I think they're doing sessions right, timing right. It is 100% a creator show, for sure. For sure.
I did notice that the Podcast Movement folks announced a deep creator track sponsorship with YouTube. I don't know if you saw that or not.
Wow.
So in Evolutions, they're going to have a complete separate track at Podcast Movement that's sponsored by YouTube, and it looks like a lot of the content that's going into that track is coming out of YouTube. Kind of like what we saw actually my first year that I went over to the podcast show. This was a couple of years ago now. YouTube was one of the big name sponsors of the podcast show too. I think it's a similar type of thing that they're doing at Podcast Movement. The other thing I wanted to ask about too, and you can respond to that YouTube thing if you want, and then what I saw at Podfest around the Black Magic booth, I thought it was an interesting thing too. But yeah, if you want to talk about the YouTube thing.
I just, Podcast Movement needs money. So, of course, if someone comes in, so I'm going to sponsor a track, business move, comes in with $100,000 or whatever it costs to do the track.
Yeah.
Why not? If I was running the show and YouTube came to me and said, hey, here's, what is it going to cost us to do a track? I'd write that proposal up in about 15 seconds and take their money too. You have to. It is what but is that going to hurt them down the road? I'm just saying right today, Podfest is the show for creators. Podcast Movement is the show for business.
Right. Deal making and advertising and all of the more revenue oriented activities.
Yep.
In the space.
So with that known, I have a serious decision to make on whether we go to both shows every year. Is there ROI? Is there enough ROI out of the winter show to keep I will go to the summer show always. Yeah, we have to. We got to wait unless it really goes like to commercial.
Yeah.
But you know who we didn't see at Podfest? We didn't see Podbean. Podbean was not there. Buzzsprout, us, and Libsyn. Matter of fact, Libsyn and us were right next to each other.
Yeah.
My session was well attended. There was probably 60, 70 in the room. Had good compliments for the session. How many people we have for the New Media Show? 20, 25?
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah, it was a room that was kind of hard to find.
Yeah.
And And I also
Really
heard
hard to
that
find.
the door was jamming too. There were people that were trying to get in that
They couldn't get
actually
in.
get the door open. So
So, but I have no complaints on Podfest. There is, I don't know what it's going to take, but he should be able to triple or quadruple the attendance at that show. On just creators, there's a huge opportunity there.
did you ever hear a final number on the attendance? I did get a little bit of a clue.
What did you think?
Well, I heard it from one of the team members that told me it was around 1,200.
Yeah, I would say that's accurate. Around 1,200.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1,000
Just-
to 1,200. That's pretty close because I did a head count in one of the keynotes, figuring that it would be 60% filled, maybe 70% filled on a keynote, and that's about the number I came up with.
Yeah, and frankly, that's after Chris and team did a whole like a year-long pod tour all over the
Yeah,
country, right?
yeah.
Trying to get people and I think the takeaway from that would be is that all those people thought of those events as kind of like standalone events.
Yeah, maybe.
They weren't really going to get people to go to Orlando, but I just wonder if the timing of that event, as well as that it's always in Florida, maybe holds that event back a little bit.
That's I wish they would move to another location, do another location.
Like on more central to the U.S. somewhere,
Yeah,
like in
Boston.
Denver.
Oh, they could do Boston, Denver. It has to be a major hub.
Yeah.
So maybe even New York.
Or Dallas or someplace like that too.
But Chris has great ties to the businesses there, so it's not moving anytime soon.
Well, being so community focused, definitely he pulls a fair amount of people from Florida into that event.
Yeah.
So
And I was asking people where people were from, and there was a bigger diversity of people from out of state this year than previous. And some people were able to come because of the situation in LA, but I think that he's done a good job there on that event. We'll go back next year, no problem. When I come home and have this many follow-ups, there's something in the app that we could see how many total scans there were.
Mm-hmm.
And we had 1/12 of the total badge scans at our booth of all the badge scans that happened. Because some reason in the app, it shows you how many badges got scanned.
Oh.
And so we did about 100 badge scans, which for me is that's a good number. And the right mix of new people. The most number of people that were looking to migrate to. Specific
Change hosts.
Yeah, from one specific company for one specific reason, and I'm not going to reveal that because then they'll fix their issue. But
Yeah.
So if they move, that's one thing. Talking and moving are two different things.
Well, and it was certainly in a much nicer hotel this year.
Much nicer. Food was fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went out with my daughter and my grandkids, and we went to where they joust. It's the medieval times. So the grandkids had a great time. That was the only time I left the hotel. The rest of the time I stayed in.
Yeah, I didn't actually go anywhere either.
The menu was getting thin at the end of the event, but
Yeah. And I guess it's going to be back there again next year.
Yeah.
So we know what we're getting into with that. So.
Our two partners had great. Apple Podcast was there. No, excuse me, not Adobe Podcast was there.
Mm-hmm.
And they had great time. Code 80X is another one of our partner. He bought a booth right at the last minute. He's thrilled with the results. There wasn't that many vendors, maybe 30, 25, 30, something like that. Danner J. Lewis is thrilled with his results. Pod Engagement, Jay over there at Coleman Insights, they were thrilled with their results. So I think the vendors were pretty happy.
And did you walk by and take a look at the Black Magic
I did.
booth?
Yeah. Really?
I felt that their offering there was out of alignment for that community.
Yeah,
So,
they were definitely more NAB-ish on.
and I
But,
told them that. I mean, it's not like they don't have a product line that caters
Right,
to
right,
that market.
right.
They do, but they chose the
pro.
extreme, or actually the high end market. I
Yeah.
was actually their extreme ATEM, is
Yeah.
what they had
Yeah.
on display there, and that's way beyond the price range
yeah.
for podcasters at that event.
Well, maybe, they'll figure the crowd out and adjust the following year. But I went over and talked to him, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I've got one of those, I said, I paid some of your guys' salaries on, converters I bought years ago. But
Well, and all their video cameras on tripods that were there
yeah,
were all 6K cameras.
I know.
Too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was like I think each one of them was at least $5,000.
Yeah. They could have came with some prosumer stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I told them to put on display. They've got the ATEM Mini and the
Yep.
ATEM Pro.
Yeah.
Just have those. Those are in a price range that this
Yep.
community can afford,
Yep.
and have some.
I wonder why
kind
they
of-
didn't know the audience. Maybe, who knows?
I told them if they wanted to do that, they probably should go to either Podcast Movement or go to.
Even outside the price range for podcast movement.
Yeah, I mean it's really pushing the envelope
Yeah,
on
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But
It's-
at least those bigger media companies are there, right?
Yep.
So that would be the only other place, and then the NAB and
Yeah, well, they go to any. They have a massive booth.
I-
They
I would
take a
imagine.
whole corner of Central Hall. So
and Shure was there as well.
yeah,
They were talking about their
new
their,
mic.
their new mic that connects to each other.
They were right next to us. They were busy the entire time. They had people at the booth the entire time.
Yeah, I think Shure's done very well in the industry over the last
Yeah.
few years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And so was Rode, but Rode wasn't there.
no, they weren't. So there was a few missing vendors that had been there in the past. So
I think that event definitely needs to get bigger. I mean, Chris has had close to 3,000 people at that event in the past, so I'm not quite sure what's going on. And it's going to be interesting to see what the turnout is in Chicago
yeah,
for Podcast Movement if we can continue to see a decline in attendance.
yeah. I'm not attending the event in Chicago. I have other team members going.
Yeah.
So I had Dave Clements, one of my support team members at Podcast Movement, and I told him get his passport. I'm going to take him to London. He did a fabulous job. Man's a born salesman. I'm saying I put you in sales instead of support. But he said, please don't.
But yeah, I mean, Todd, I'm sure you're feeling this too. There's a big fall off, or so much fewer
Fewer what?
Really, I
Rob,
think-
you blipped there for a second. Fewer what?
fewer podcast conferences.
Oh yeah.
Now it's
The mini
dramatically
ones are gone.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and it'll be interesting to see what happens with the podcast show too. Coming up, that's coming up in the spring, and I'm assuming that you're not planning on going to NAB this year either.
No. We opted. We're done with NAB.
Yeah.
Until they figure out if they ever want to support podcasting as a
Or
a
get
thing
back
again.
to it.
Yeah.
Get back to it
Yeah,
again.
maybe now that the president secretary mentioned podcasts, maybe.
Maybe now, as a podcast company, you could be a member of the NAB because
Yeah.
currently you can't.
Well, what will be fun is looking at sales numbers on Friday to see if there was a bump because of the mentioned podcast on.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yep. I
Okay.
think we made it 90 minutes. Todd.
Yeah, we're
Again.
a bit over. I just got a text I got food waiting for me. All right, I'm Todd at blueberry.com, at Geek News, at geeknews.chat on Mastodon, at Geek News on X. Rob?
I'm on X as well, at Rob Greenlee, and on YouTube, at Rob Greenlee over there too, robgreenlee.com. And if you want to send me an email, you can send it to just robgreenlee at gmail.com. That'll come to me. We'd love to hear from you and give us any kind of little tip on anything that we can talk about on the show. So that would be great.
And just as by the way, Blueberry is in the process of dismantling our YouTube channel and rebuilding it. So
Really?
there is going to be a series of Podcast Insider Special Edition episodes that are going to be put out. And
Okay.
so if you aren't already following our YouTube channel, there'll be anything we're releasing is also going to be released as a podcast. So never fear, it'll be on our Podcast Insider show as well. But you'll catch the full video interview on our YouTube channel. So
So is this show going to move over there?
not to the Blueberry channel. Why would
Okay.
I don't think that would be appropriate unless you want me to move it over there.
I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm just saying, just curious.
Or we could build another channel for this show too. So,
Yeah, we could do that.
all right, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next week at the same crazy time.
And we may have a guest next week.
Oh, that
so-
would be fun. We've had it. If Adobe Podcast can make it next week, that would be good.
Yep.
All right, everyone.
All right.
Stay safe, and thanks, and send us your tips and secrets.
That's right.
Yeah, we want to know.
Top tips.
And don't forget, we have a PayPal thing on. Rob and I could use a little spare beer money. So,
I don't drink beer anymore, but that's
then
okay.
wine
I'll find
or
something else.
juice or whatever,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, everyone. Thanks. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.